Thorin vs. Reddit, episode 7, CSGO edition, and I'm going to try and make these a little bit shorter perhaps, maybe for this one, but long. I do them more often in general, because these always go to the back of my mind in terms of what I'm trying to get to. So, this is from a thread about Freakazoid, and the one where it was like how you should look at both sides, and then obviously people were just mad circle jerking Freakazoid's side when they'd gone mad circle jerk against him before, even though in this particular scenario it's pretty obvious the case is in the middle somewhere, that both people did wrong to some differing degrees. Now this was a comment that had 33 points. This guy explains that he'd written a letter to Freakazoid. He put, "I'll just write here what I wrote him a couple of months ago in a mail." And then he starts writing, posting his email. "Hey Ryan, if that's okay. I've been watching you for a while, and more so, been a fan since the day you joined C9. I wrote to you on one of your streams about 9 months ago. I was in a very bad place. I'd tried to take my own life and was feeling like the scum of the earth. You did not tell me to do this or do that. You spoke about state of mind. Find what makes you happy. These are words that truly spoke to me. I'd been seeing my therapist for about 5 months when I wrote that in your chat. She never told me anything that spoke to me that way. Not particularly towards / meant for you. You just happened to read it and respond. What you said might be small, but it was so fucking true for me. I'd been doing whatever anyone told me would make me happy, or the stuff that you should do. I just want to thank you for that moment. That changed my life. Thank you. From a 26-year-old father in Sweden, from the bottom of my heart, thank you." Now, what's great about that is 33 points. Someone responds 3 points and says, "That's awesome. Did he respond?" Then the original guy puts nope, ... What I love about this is how self-entitled people are on the internet. Because the whole thing was, Freakazoid had mentioned that whenever he gets a lot of messages, ones that people are in trouble, they need help, he often responds to them, and it implies, maybe he spends more time responding to them than other people tend to. Now, what's great about this guy's original message is, first of all, Freakazoid already saw this guy's message, responded to him, and by this guy's own words, the things that Freakazoid said to him truly spoke to him, helped him in a way his own therapist, that presumably he might have been paying for, hadn't helped him over 5 months of work, and in some sense dug him out of a deep place where he was thinking of killing himself, and he's a father to some child. Now, that's not enough for this guy. Now, when he writes this to Freakazoid, now the obligation on Freakazoid is he now must respond to his second message just saying thank you. He must somehow personally respond to that. Otherwise, it's like, nope, ... As though there's any obligation for Freakazoid there. Freakazoid doesn't have to respond to your first message. Freakazoid is a fucking streamer. His job is not to save people's lives and pull them out of a dark place. If he happens to do that, great. Good for Freakazoid, good for you that this happened. Isn't that nice of him? He's in no way obligated to do any more. But this is what people are really like online. It's like I get people, who'll send me like a message on Facebook saying, "I noticed you do not have your videos as MP3s on SoundCloud, so I have created a SoundCloud in your name with all of your images, and I've put all your work on there. Of course, if you were to tell me not to put it up, I would take it down. I'm not obligated to tell you shit, mate. The fact that you've done that means I can just go to SoundCloud and tell them, remove this account. That's nothing to do with me. You don't just have the power anytime you feel like it, like some mad 12-year-old white rich girl to just go, I want people to pay attention to me. So I'm just now obligated to contact you personally and ask you to do something that you should never have done anyway, and I'm not obligated to discuss with you any. You have the power to just get my attention anytime you want to, do you? What a ridiculous world this would be. So it's great that Freakazoid already did it there, but what's great is even in the case where Freakazoid apparently helped someone's life, did a nice thing by responding to him, gave him words of encouragement, the fan still wants more. They still think they own you, that they deserve whatever they want from you, and that you're obliged to actually contact them. It's amazing, isn't it, that even when people seem like the nice guy, they can be total assholes, at least in that instance. Now, this is a thread which was about, let's have a look. What was the topic of this thread about? Because it says 4 years. What was it 4 years of what? I'll just have to check here. It was 4 years since NIP had been resurrected in CSGO. So there's a comment here, 23 points, so people obviously enjoyed it, and it said, it was about Fiflarin had made some comments. So this guy responds to Fiflarin, ready to straight up lick that bunghole. To be honest, Nip haven't been as dominant as when you were there. Maybe you were doing something right after all. Now, what's great about that is, this just totally goes in the face of what actually happened at the end of Fiflaren's career in NIP, what was happening to NIP, and why that move had to happen, and why actually if Fiflaren had stuck around, he might have buried Nip forever, and they might have just never come out of that hole. In this sort of thing, this guy's like, they weren't dominant. Guess what? Nip weren't as dominant at the end of Fiflaren's, the last 3 to 4 months of his career with Nip, as they had been before. That's the whole reason why he left, and why it was much better for Nip that he did leave, and why, remember, he left, very next event was the major, winner 2014, boom, right to the final, 2 rounds from winning the whole fucking tournament. I think 1 round, actually. I think they were at map point, in fact, in the final on Overpass. So here's a little history lesson for everyone who doesn't know, and thinks that Fiflaren just left Nip when there was some super dominant team. So, up to and including DreamHack Summer 2014. Remember, Fiflaren left, I think it was in was it early November, late October? I think early November maybe of 2014. So DreamHack Summer is obviously in June, July, I think it was June of 2014. Nip won that tournament. And up until that tournament and including it, Nip had never placed below top 4 at a tournament ever. They'd had a run of 31 straight tournaments. Now, when I say tournaments, those include domestic tournaments, Swedish-only things, some of the less competitive tournaments in the early days, but still 31 tournaments, top 4, every single one. Then they went from winning DreamHack Summer to ESEA season, I think it was 16. At ESEA season 16, they finished 5th to 6th, lost to VP, lost to Complexity. Then they went to the Iron Gaming tournament, which was a dog shit land with terrible conditions, not enough space, people playing in retarded conditions. And the only good team there was Na'Vi. The others were all bums, so they got to pad their stats record by beating a lot of bums. Then they beat Na'Vi, who admittedly they had a good matchup against at the time. Conditions were terrible, though, hard to take that as a big, notable LAN in any sense. They then came home, went to Gfinity G3, which was the first Gfinity event. It was a super stacked event with a really good format, lots of group stage games. They lost 3 group stage games to Shox's Epsilon, Fnatic, it was actually Fnatic's first ever event, the lineup with Crimson Olafmeister, and iBuyPower, but they still got out of the group stage. In the quarterfinals, they got utterly bodied by the Dignitas team, which is now Astralis, but that had Fetish as the in-game leader, got utterly shit on in the quarterfinals, and were out 5th to 8th. So second straight event out of 3 where they've gone out 5th to 8th, or 5th or below. They then went to ESL1 Cologne and had a miracle run to win that major. And the key thing was the very nature of how they were able to win that major is why Fiflaren was right a few months to leave. Because if that's what it took for them to win a major at that point in time, they just weren't a good team anymore. I mean, you have to consider in the group stage they lost to Epsilon again, on Cobblestone actually, in a randomized pick. They won against Cloud9 and LDLC only because the third map was a randomized Cobblestone, which they won 16-14 in both cases, playing from the CT side, which is the one you could really exploit, because this was the old version of Cobblestone, with, for example, that weird break between the wall going into B, and it just took way longer to rotate around the map as terrorists, so it was a lot harder to play as terrorists, and no one had the map figured out, no one wanted to play it. They won these 2 fluky ones there. They went to the final, they got Cobblestone first map, they won a small cushion, but not big. And then the final map was Inferno. They were in position to potentially lose. They won 16-13 in narrow fashion. Key detail to remember, whenever you think of that tournament, don't just think Nip won, Nip were the dominant team. No, Nip were the dominant team a year before. They hadn't been in the world, they were in the world numbers 1 team tenuously for a couple of months in 2014. But remember this detail anytime anyone ever brings up ESL1 Cologne 2014. Nip lost more rounds at that tournament than they won, and they won the tournament. And the Cobblestone randomized third maps. I think it would have lost to both Cloud9 and LDLC in the semis and quarters if it was any other map there. Now, after that, remember, that's a big event win for them. After that, they go something like, I think it was a month after Cologne, they pulled out of the online portion of the next ESEA season because they'd only won 2 games out of 8. They then went to DreamHack Stockholm on the 25th of September, went out in the group stage there, losing to both the new LDLC and new Titan lineups, brand new lineups that had never played on LAN before. 5 days after that, so 30th of September, they were eliminated online from Star Series Season 11. Didn't get to the LAN finals there. 11 days after that, they missed out on the LAN finals of Face It Season 2. They'd only gone 7-7 in terms of overall record there. Didn't make that LAN. 4 days after that, they failed to make the Fragbite Masters Season 2 LAN finals. End of October, they went to ESWC, another LAN. They went out in the group stages, losing to Platinium, which is a couple of guys who now play with fucking, I think it's like Body, and then like Matt End is who plays with in the LDLC lineup that now has existence in it. Hellraisers, who at the time were still decent, and then got bodied 16-1 by the Kenny S. Cayley Titan on Dust 2 and went out in the group stage at ESWC there. So let's count how many they had. They had 1, let's see, 2, 3, 4. So 4 out of the 6 tournaments they played, they placed 5th or below, 2 of them going out in the group stage. They won 2 tournaments, one in incredibly fluky fashion, ESL Cologne, the other one, Iron Gaming, not even worthwhile mentioning, Azalan. May as well have been a shit show match against Na'Vi. And they just did terribly and bombed a bunch of online competitions. 3 online competitions they had to essentially leave or were not... 4 they didn't make it to the LAN finals of. Absolutely terrible form. At that point in time, they had no home map. Cobblestone, the map that they'd fluked Cologne with, turned out not to even work for them. That's what Platinium bodied them on. That's what they were losing in other scenarios online on. Cash, they tried to make a home map at Gfinity G3, got bodied on that by Dignitas. They've been playing it tons at that tournament. Inferno, they were losing the majority of the time on. That's a map they always got out of jail on. Dust 2, they were getting straight banged on. Couldn't play that at all. They'd lost something like 18 maps over those 6 events. And remember, one event was just padding stats against North American teams. 6 different maps they'd lost. They were losing 3 maps an event. Put it this way, over the last event, 11 events before this period, they only lost 32 maps over 11 events, 2 maps per event, and that's much better competition when you consider some of the bums at Iron Gaming. They'd previously, before this 6-tournament period I'm highlighting, made 28 out of the last 31 finals of offline events. In this period, they made the finals of 2 out of 6, and 1 was where there was only 2 good teams there at the whole tournament, Iron Gaming. Get Right wasn't hard carrying anymore like a superstar, he was just a star player. Forest was very average for a star talent. Exist was legitimately bad. Freiburg was god-awful. And Fifth Line was fucking appalling as a player at that point in time. It's absolutely justified that he left. They should have kicked him actually at that point in time, even if he hadn't left, so I'm not sure what the circumstances were there. And this guy is just straight licking that bunghole by suggesting that Nip haven't looked as dominant as he had. Yeah, guess what? They didn't look as dominant when he was there, mate, for like a solid 4 to 5 months. That's why motherfucker had to leave. See ya. So let's keep going. Now my blood pressure's gone up there. I'm pumped up now, boys. So this one has 15 points. It's in a thread about Simple and Na'Vi coming to ESL1 New York. It says, I really wish when someone joins a new team, the org would at least get the new roster together to take photos like this. One day, and you have publicity shots of all the players in the jersey and as a team. Now, first of all, logistically, some of the Na'Vi players live in, I think Guardian actually lives in like Norway or Sweden or something. People say Sweden. Obviously, Seized and Flamey live in Russia, so you'd have to fly them in from Russia. It's not as simple to just pay all this money to do the pictures now. You're going to get the pictures at some point in time when everyone's together. Secondly, this actually ignores the fact that if you don't get the news out there yourself, there will be tons of reports on every website that will leak this news on a more official basis. And basically, you have to just get things done quickly. Esports isn't one when you can plan these things out as much as that. It doesn't have an off-season in the same way. So it just doesn't work the same way. That's not a massive dig to that guy. Just pointing out that it's not an ideal world like you imagine. So, this is from the thread about the fact that people want Valve to make the player profiles about Nico and Cold Zero, which I agree, those would be 2 great ones. This guy, 30 points, says, Cold Zero is a rich guy that started playing CS similar to Shroud's life. I don't think it will be an interesting profile video. Actually, that's because you are being very condescending towards people who are rich. What, so the fact that he's rich doesn't mean it will be an interesting video? What if he was rich and that meant that his family wanted him to go into stocks or become a doctor or something, and instead he's chosen to become a professional video gamer in Brazil, where at the time they had no elite level team. They just had the Luminosity Keyed Stars team, which was pretty decent, but even then not earning mega bucks and having to really put in mad hours and live in terrible conditions in America compared to the other top teams. This would be a great storyline. He gave up all that to go and do this, and he was a rich guy who threw away being a rich guy. Maybe he had his disapproval of his parents as a result, came to do all the... I can already think of a fantastic profile there. Secondly, this whole thing of like, well, he's a rich guy, so he can't have an interesting story. This reminds me of people who are like, when they hear that like a celebrity's depressed, they're like, oh, boo-hoo, with all that fucking money and you're just sad, loser. I'd be so happy to have millions. You don't understand the way life is then, mate. Money like that doesn't just make you happy. It's about how satisfied are you with life? How much do you feel like you're developing your potential? Where are you going? What are your imaginations and dreams for yourself? What can you accomplish? Someone rich, someone in a position of privilege, who's had all the normal excuses taken away as to why they don't get happiness and success and satisfaction in a meaningful manner to themselves, might be more depressed because they don't have all those excuses like, oh, well, if I just had millions and I'd do my ideas and everyone would see what a genius I am. But what if you got a chance to do that and you fucking failed and no one did agree with it and no one liked your ideas and no one liked none of your products? Then you'd be even more sad, wouldn't you, when you'd realise the fucking absolute tragedy of what a fucking mess you are as a human being. Guess what? People who are rich can be incredibly depressed too. It's not like that in society, is it? That's why we have people who are seen as dilettantes who do drugs when they're rich, who just ruin their whole lives because they can't find something more to life, can they? They're just in a hole, even though they've got all this richness about them. At the end of the day, you put a fucking bird in a golden cage, still a caged bird, isn't it? So this is from a thread about JW saying we need a TI for CS. And this guy just goes, -1 points, but I thought it was a worthwhile comment to make something about. Is it just me, or what he said can be translated to, we need more money? Again, you're not viewing it in the context of TI, Dota, and esports. They only just increased the prize pool from $250k to $1 million recently. Dota 2 this year had 3 majors, each one of them $3 million prize pool. That's more than all that we've had for all the majors, for one of those majors. We only had 2 majors this year, $1 million each. Not even enough for one major in Dota. They had 3 that, and then they let the crowd fund a $20 million TI. How is that ridiculous for JW to be saying we need a TI and a chance to do this sort of like crowdfunding, etc. in CSGO? What a ridiculous comment. Well, it 100k for first place, which is what used to be the old ones. That's still a lot compared to what I make. Who gives a fuck, mate? It's not about you and your loser life. It's about all of reality, isn't it? That's the context. Get out your own head. So this was a comment where 2 points. Someone said about double elimination. He said, I agree. There's nothing worse than a close 3-2 series and then the second series ending 3-0. This is like in the final for the upper bracket team. However, the argument that the lower bracket has to play extra games doesn't really count as an advantage for me. Some people feed off that adrenaline and could lead to better play in the next game. While the upper bracket is warming up on DM servers, the other team could be more crisp and focused. Okay, in theory, but the problem with that is I've never found any actual basis to show that that's like a real principle. Even the teams who say that, oh, well, I'd rather be warmed up and I was on a real roll. That nearly always is them talking in hindsight. It's purely psychological. The same team who, if they were on a roll from the low bracket, then won the final, be like, yeah, we were fully zoned in, everyone believed in each other, we had everything flowing that day, and then we won. You know what? The same team, if they happen to get fucking straight banged out in the final by the other team just being better, would then claim, oh, you know what, actually playing those extra games, that really burned us out and we kind of gave it all in the lower bracket final. Then we got to the final, we didn't have anything left. If we'd only had another day, people just do that shit in hindsight. That's why there is no hard and fast rule as to which one's better. And that's why it's actually entirely valid to discuss the format, not just make your mind up in this particular sense. So this is from a thread. Oh, it's the same thread. Let me see. Here's a good one, because this has 8 points, and the key part is just the first part. So, I'm amazed how people don't want to have a really big event once a year. TI is actually a thing why we have such a rise of esports right now, a whole new level. Looking back, nobody gave a fuck about it for 10 years. Not only that, but don't you want to see the real show every year? Much more hype, larger stakes, are things to remember on a new level. First of all, don't get any of these premises. These are all just premises put out there, entirely unsupported, doesn't even give them good reasons. So apparently, TI is the reason for the rise of esports. Now, what's funny is I wouldn't say that at all. Dota 2 didn't even get that big until like 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe not even that. The first TIs were just at mad exhibitions for $1 million. That's it. They weren't anything that was some super huge thing bidding the level. Dota 2 didn't even get big off the first couple of internationals. I agree, the show, the spectacle looks really awesome, but even then, that's matched by League of Legends World Championships, CSGO Majors, etc. Admittedly, CSGO Majors have lagged behind the last couple of years, but the original internationals, if you look at the first 3 of them, were more like the CSGO Majors now. So I don't support that premise at all. I definitely don't think TI is just this thing that made esports go to a whole new level. I think all of esports got similar levels like this, and it all collectively, the sheer horizontal size of the esports getting bigger across many games is what makes it seem huge, not just like one event. That didn't somehow push CSGO to get big and StarCraft 2 to get big and League of Legends to get big. No, that's ridiculous. That's not the way it worked at all. I don't know why this guy's talking like he's the fucking expert. And then he says, looking back, nobody gave a fuck about it for 10 years. Who's nobody? And what way did they not give a fuck? So they went from not giving a fuck to suddenly it's a huge level of considered TI. No, ridiculous. It was a gradual growth up. And guess what? It had bumps along the way. Then it went down with like the recession in 2008 and CGS falling off. And then it went back up again with 1.6. But it got to a certain level. It didn't get it further. Then StarCraft 2 came along. Then League of Legends came along. Then Dota 2 came along. And CSGO went in the slipstream of League of Legends up with it. It's not as simple as this. Why do people always, like, I will just condense all of 10 years history into my opinion that is one sentence long. This is a fact. Brilliant, yeah. And then he says, don't we want the real show? Mate, for me, the CSGO majors are the real show. I love it that I get 3 real shows every year. I can't think of what more hype you would want, what more aspects you want. I look at TI and I think they miss a trick in terms of how to fully hype the teams and do proper features about them and have awesome intros, like the ones I try to do for majors, and have little videos talking about the story of this guy and properly spaced in. I think they miss some of the tricks. It's a fantastic event, probably the best in esports, but I still think they don't get all the hype properly. The fact that it's just one event, I don't think one event makes it more than all the rest. I think actually in that sense, it's a bit of a... It's bad. You only get one event per year in that sense of the biggest. I'd rather have the show 3 times a year. If you don't enjoy it, well, fine, go watch something else, mate. I think it's awesome, as good as it can be. Likewise, this comment has 71 points, same thread. Definitely. Right now, all of the majors are, oh, it's just another major. That's neat. Someone's got to raise the stakes for once. Don't even get this comment whatsoever. Really, that's how majors are for you. For me, MLG Columbus was incredible. Couldn't believe Luminosity getting it together, winning on maps that were like 4th and 5th best maps for them to win basically get to the final and win the title. Then overcoming Na'Vi in that manner, and the crowd's reaction when the guys from Team Liquid played, and Astralis bombing on Fnatic like that in such epic fashion, when Fnatic had won every tournament before that with that lineup. Well, that was just another major. Just neat, I guess. And what, ESL1 Clone wasn't cool for you, the group of death, and the fucking VP taking SK all the way. How much more hype can you get? What more do you want exactly? Sounds like CS and esports isn't for you, mate. You need to go and watch something like fucking Game of Thrones with like cliffhangers and all this sort of shit. Or maybe you need to just go and watch the Dota 2 apparently, since that's like the big show. Oh my god, it's incredible. For me, they're already doing it in CSGO. These majors are incredible as they are. We've already got everything. If you was just, oh, it's just another major, I don't feel that way, mate. So everyone doesn't agree with you. It's ridiculous that like your opinion like that you haven't even put any reasons as to why. Someone's got to raise the stakes. What, by just putting more money in? Is that it? Well, more money is going to raise the stakes. I'll tell you something that I've observed from 15 years of Counter-Strike. People who are true competitors play the same way for $10,000 first place as they do for $1 million first place. That's something I've observed over my career. So this was in a thread about case openings and people trying to imply that like, oh, it's just like gambling opening a case. This is a really great comment. How it's just like a casino opening a case. This is a really great comment. 10 points. In all the casinos I have been to over the years, I have never seen a slot machine or video slot or video lottery that scrolls one prize at a time until landing on a random square which contains your prize, and you get a prize every time. So that first part is excellent. That's exactly why it's not gambling in the same sense. First of all, when you gamble, you can just straight up lose everything. Sometimes you don't win. I mean, do you not understand this concept, this key principle and mechanism of gambling? When you open a case, yeah, you might get something worth less than what you paid for the key to open the case, but you always get something. That's a key point to make there. Secondly, there's the aspect of this part that he says. The problem people have, in reality, is people valuing skins at less than they are worth. Considering it takes one key to get a skin out of a case, smart people would force the market price to hover around at least that value. If people weren't stupid enough to sell things for less than they paid for them, nobody would be gambling with cases at all. Be mad at your community and economics, not Valve. I actually agree with this guy. I think that's also why the skin economy is shit. It's because you get idiots who themselves... I mean, part of it is the gambling mentality that if they have something they don't want, I'll just sell it for next to nothing. I'll undercut everyone and sell it for even less. Doesn't make any sense, does it? So it's stupidity of people on the skin economy. He's made all the skins worth nothing. I agree with that to some degree. I think that's actually a pretty solid principle there. So this is from the Global Offensive Roast of I by Power. 50 points. This guy puts, basically, the CS equivalent... basically, the CS equivalent of I'm a celebrity, get me out of here right now. Washed up people trying to stay relevant via terrible drama for people who have nothing better to do with their lives than watching people who will forever be irrelevant by now. No roast required. They already have it warm in their personal hell. First of all, they are relevant. You're talking about them. We're all talking about them. They still get mentioned every week, and they haven't even played a fucking game in like 2 years or something mental. That's pretty sick right there. Now, secondly, what is all this trying to stay relevant shit? People do not exist for your benefit, shithead. They don't just exist only to get your attention. This guy's spending all his time doing his streaming that he enjoys and making money from doing that and trying to be funny and entertaining just to get my personal attention. Well, you got it now, asshole, but you'll be irrelevant forever. He doesn't give a fuck about you, mate. If you're not there, there'll always be other people. That's why these people will always be relevant, by the way. Guess what? What we've now found out now that they're no longer pro players is some of these guys are pretty entertaining as well and good at the game. If you look at people like Dazed, etc. Entertaining and good at the game, therefore good streamers, therefore some of the top streamers, and therefore constantly, just by playing the fucking game, create awesome clips that we all like to watch. They're not purposely sat down, like, scripting them. How can I stay relevant? What should I do in this next clip? That's just their personalities. You sound mad that they're just fucking entertaining at the drop of a hat with ease. So you have to believe that they're somehow plotting and this is all just to stay relevant and to keep me interested. God, I wish they'd just go away. They got banned for cheating. This is bullshit. Should be someone else up there. Are you fucking just mad at life, mate? What is this shit? Also, what is this staying relevant, trying to stay relevant? I don't know anyone out there. I personally don't know anyone who's like a famous pro player, journalist, some sort of manager, some sort of person involved in the industry in esports who's got skills and been around for many years, who's doing it to stay relevant. I don't know anyone who's doing that. Most of them do it because it's their passion, or it's something that they get satisfaction for, or they're trying to improve and get better, or they make money from it. No one's doing it just like, just to stay relevant. That's such a ridiculous term that is just said by like little people trying to reach up and pull down the guys who actually fucking made it when you're just losers who did shit with your lives. This is from a thread where Taz was saying about how he wanted things to go back. He wanted to go back to how he played in 1.6, where he was actually like the second best player on the team for a while in those Neo, Pentagram, MYM, FX, ESC lineups that won majors, etc. So this comment has 153 points. He still regularly has rounds where he gets 2 to 3 kills. I think he is proving that this isn't an age-limited game like previously assumed. We really don't know what the age limit of a professional video game player is, despite what people may say. Hopefully he keeps playing even when he's 40. Now, first of all, I agree with all the stuff about we don't know the age. That's something I've actually thought for a long time, despite the fact people used to tell me for years, I'm talking about over half a decade, you idiot, once you pass 21, all your reflexes go to shit. Even though I was just following pro sports, where like fucking snooker, where they have god tier, like hand-eye precision at age like 35 or whatever. But whatever, we'll just ignore all these fucks, shall we? So, the part I don't like about this is like the way he characterizes it. Like, he still regularly has rounds where he gets 2 to 3 kills. Okay? And is that somehow the metric of a really good player? Does that show he's a very good player, that he could be a very good player? The whole point is, the reason why Taz doesn't have very good land stats over most lands over the last year is because if he does get 2 to 3 kills, then he's having tons of rounds where he gets no kills to even it out, right? Or he's having tons of rounds where he gets a kill, gets traded on too easily, gives up the whole site, and is the opponents take the whole game over. Obviously, stats in this sense can't lie. He can't be getting 2 to 3 kills so often, like top pro players, and then having such a bad statistical aspect to the game, even in terms of like FPR, because that one isn't affected necessarily by deaths, etc. Talking about frags per round. People just always exaggerate. What they're doing there is taking their very subjective. Well, I can remember a few times when he had 2 to 3 kills. Yeah, let's look at the actual numbers, shall we, mate? Come on. I agree the eye test's the most important thing, but now you're using it where actually only statistics make sense. So this is from the thread about the Game Online Nordic Super Team. And someone made a comment about how, you know, like Norway could have easily rivaled Sweden as a country because of all the talent it had from there. Which, by the way, I agree with. So they enjoy this comment. 16 points. Easily rivaling Sweden. So a country that never made any noise except for one team and a few players is comparable to the talent pool of Sweden. That's why both Executor and Element played in Swedish teams and then with North Americans. Because the Norwegian talent pool was so poor they couldn't find Norwegian players of the same caliber. This is so wrong. Actually, Norway, at a number of points in time over the first 5 to 6 years, did have a talent pool that could rival Sweden in terms of like producing 1 or 2 top-level teams. What used to happen was, first of all, Norway is one of the most expensive countries in the world in terms of like cost of living. Norway, when I went there, I once went and stayed in Sweden for 3 weeks, then went to Norway for a week. Everything in Norway was like 2 times what it is in Sweden, and Sweden already is one of the most expensive countries I've ever been to, coming from the UK. So it's incredibly expensive, just the cost of living there. As a result, the big problem in Norway is they never had vaguely the same level of sponsorships and stuff surrounding Norwegian teams as the Swedish teams did. They did early on, and actually it's people like Executor and Element leaving Norwegian teams that had a chance, going to those Swedish teams, which kind of betrayed to some degree some of those Norwegian teams and fucked over all their teammates because the star players left and went and played for the Swedish teams. Now it's true, Swedish teams didn't have that many orgs. They played for like German orgs, UK orgs, etc. Fnatic, SK, all the other lineups, Team 9. But I guess Team 9 was Swedish, but they didn't have mega sponsorship ever. In this scenario, this guy's so wrong. The talent pool in Norway was incredible if you look across history, and they had some people who were very, very good, and it's a shame that they had to play elsewhere. It's mainly sponsorship issues and the fact that they didn't stay together. It wasn't lack of talent, actually, that stopped Norway from competing in that sense. Norway, if you had equal sponsorship opportunities for everyone in the world, and you played out 1.6 to the end of history, I would actually pick Norway to be the country that would come second to Sweden if they'd had the opportunities, based on the things I've known and I've seen how incredible some of the players from that country were. We're talking about fucking Executor, Element, Real. These are some of the best players of all time. The most skilled, the most intelligent, the most like tactically sound. They had it all in Norway. They just had a lot of disadvantages, and also they had the most factors go against them to make people want to quit being pro gamers because they couldn't make a good living at it because there wasn't enough opportunities. Meanwhile, they live in a country where if you get a job, you're going to earn way more than you would as a pro gamer. So this is from a thread where it was Reflections with Hiko, and this comment is actually -30. He was very downvoted, but I wanted to address this point because you see it so often. It says, why did I get downvoted when I said Fnatic are cocky individuals? Hiko literally says the same 2 hours in. Almost because we don't just view the opinion in isolation, do we? Since it's not a fact, it can't be proved, we're looking at who says the opinion to find out the context on them saying it. You just a random shitter saying, I think Fnatic are cocky individuals. How would you know? What do you know about Fnatic? Ever played with them? Ever practiced with them? Ever talked to them? Have you followed their careers very long? Do you know how cocky they are to other people? Have you ever talked to other players? Have you ever followed other players? Have you done a lot of research on other players? Or are you only viewing things on interviews? Hiko's practiced against Fnatic, played against Fnatic, talked to Fnatic, been around Fnatic players at the beginning when they came up, and he was successful long before they were. Knows a lot of other players as well. So in that context, Hiko's opinion as an expert opinion, which I've just outlined why he's an expert, is why it's then interesting that he says they're cocky. You just sitting there saying, I think Fnatic are cocky individuals. Why would anyone upvote that? That's meaningless. It's just a nothing comment. And people say the same thing. When I said 6 months ago, like Thorin does now, that SK is the best team, I was downvoted again. It's probably because of who I am. And then the reasons why I said they're the best. Not just sitting there saying they are the best. You get no credit for that. That's just an opinion. Great. Everyone has opinions, mate. As the old saying goes, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has them and they all stink. That's what you got to add in fucking reasoning, haven't you? So, let's see. 1 second. Right, went there a sec. I don't want to pause the video. So, this one's from when Na'Vi were, that video of Na'Vi and Columbus where they were talking about the lack of like anti-cheat protection or people stopping people from like doing stuff with phones and stuff. There's a comment here, 68 points, that says, why don't they wear their seatbelts? Because they were in like this minivan. Hate to see them get aced before they even arrive at the event. And then a guy replies, sadly, I don't know, I can see why he's been downvoted to 0 points actually. He says, surprisingly common in Eastern Europe, accurate. To be fair, the way I see people drive, I highly doubt a seatbelt would do anything. Now I just wanted to bring this up because I actually have some information for you from times I've spent in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, Belarus, etc. And from talking to people from there and direct experiences I've had, and then even Googling a bit online. First of all, there is a horrible trend in those countries of people not wearing seatbelts, especially if it's that they're in a scenario where they're in a taxi or in some sort of like van being moved by everyone. Somehow they don't think that applies. They think that's like that. Well, I'm not in a car. Well, it's still a vehicle that can crash and you can get killed in, mate. Somehow they think it's not a big deal to do it there. Secondly, I've even had scenarios where I've seen this happen and had it happen to myself, where you get in like the passenger side or the back and you're alone with a driver of a taxi, and a guy in like Ukraine might actually tell you, oh, you don't need to put that seatbelt on. Niet. And you go, no, it's okay. And they go, niet. And then they've actually said, and I've had people translate this, that the drivers have said, oh, it's a taxi, you don't have to put the seatbelt on. Or they'll say, oh, you know what, I'm a really good driver, you don't need to put the seatbelt on. As though like him being a sick driver stops someone else crashing you and killing you and you dying. Like in this scenario, there's actually like an underground sentiment that if you put the seatbelt on, you're even suggesting you don't trust the driver, which is ridiculous because again, it's not about trusting him, it's about trusting everyone else in the whole world who has this fucking moving vehicle weapon that can kill you by crashing into you. Also, there's a mad belief, I don't know how widespread it is, but I've heard it a number of times, I've read it online, that some of them think that if you get in a crash and you have your seatbelt on, you'll be trapped in the wreckage and it'll be worse for you. They actually think it's better to be crash out the window, be thrown clear from the vehicle, and to just be aced that way. Like that is actually terrible. That's not good for you at all. Obviously you will die way more likely in that scenario. Lastly, people don't understand, if you're in the back and you don't have your seatbelt on and someone in the front does have a seatbelt on, then you will kill that driver if they crash, even if he has his seatbelt on, because you will just fly into the back of them and you'll just smash that guy completely. So I just wanted to bring that up because it actually is something that is reasonably common in Eastern Europe. It's quite sad if you think about it ultimately, because I don't want to see pro gamers' careers get brought criminally short just because they don't wear a seatbelt in this scenario. It's not a big deal, is it? Wear a seatbelt for a minute and potentially save your life, or at least keep yourself alive and maybe be crippled. I'd rather have that scenario. So this is from a thread. It was actually one of my world rankings threads, and it was the one on 20th of July. And this guy, who has 10 points, says, so why exactly is G2 at number 2 when they always lose? He then lists 9 to 12 MLGM Columbus Major, 13 to 16 DreamHack Malmo, 2nd ESL Pro League, 6th to 8th ESL 1 Qualifier, 1st ECS Season 1, 13 to 16 ESL 1 Cologne Major, lost E-League Last Chance Qualifier in the first round. Now, first of all, you yourself have just listed that they don't always lose. You just said that they won ECS 1. You said that they finished 2nd in ESL Pro League. Now, first of all, Columbus is outside of the range. As every one of my rankings is explained in the opening thing, it's over a 3-month period. So learn how fucking maths work, mate. Columbus is outside the range and was a different lineup anyway. EPL, they were super sick. They made it to the final and were a few rounds from winning the fucking tournament. We're up 2-1 in the best of 5 final against the best team in the world. Guess what? That's a pretty sick accomplishment. To do that, they had to beat a bunch of good teams to get there. They did. So they didn't always lose. Then their placing in the qualifier means fuck all, mate. You qualified, that's it. That's all qualifiers are about. It's about eliminating the teams that don't qualify. ECS, they won in sick fashion, ruffle stomping fucking Fnatic, and then Luminosity/SK in the final. Super sick. Won a huge international event there. They lost to SK and Fnatic in best of ones at the major. The Fnatic won very close fashion. And in E-League, they had a stand-in, therefore that wasn't even their team playing. Now, his problem is that they lose. Remember, losing doesn't bring you down, doesn't take points off you. You only lose points in terms of losing if you lost a championship by the range moving forwards and you don't have a championship here. In that sense, you lose by losing, but you only gain by winning. That's what happens is everyone's points are how much they win against who and how high they place. That's all that calculates the points. It's not losing, because it doesn't make sense that you lose a competition and so you go down in points, so somebody who didn't play at the competition stays the same by not playing there. I've explained this many times. This guy doesn't seem to get it. So you're really saying G2, who have 2 huge top 2 performances at big international competitions, including a big win and best of 3 win over the best team in the world and a map win advantage, winning 5 maps over SK, that somehow shouldn't put them second. Well, here's my question to you. As this guy didn't explain, who should be over them then? Who should be above them there? Fnatic? Are you having a laugh? Na'Vi? What the fuck have these teams won? Who else is there? Who else could be above them for winning? No one. By his own logic, everyone else loses even more. Doesn't make sense, does it? But you guys still upvoted this fuck. So this is from the thread about E-League and SK, my Thorin's thoughts. This has 11 points. Let's have a look here. I'll just read out this middle part here, on this first 2 paragraphs. I don't think that's fair to say, talking about the fact that like they were ineligible in the rules. While I do think that the roster handled it poorly, it's understandable where they're coming from. They earned the spot to go on to the biggest tournament, yet, but got screwed from a rule that doesn't necessarily fit their scenario. They have no control for who they played for before July, and no control after July, assuming they didn't know about the org obligations to EL prior to the end of March. Their focus, it's just misspelled. Their focus is on CS and almost exclusively CS, as evidenced by the contractual feud between SK and LG. But their job is to play CS, not work out contract negotiations, although it was foolish to not have Morrison present in March. Okay, first things first, the part about how they've earned their spot, they haven't. Because it's a league based around organizations. So only people who can represent that organization are eligible to earn a spot. You mean earn in a totally different sense, a subjective sense that doesn't actually apply to this tournament. And so that's very naive to say that. It just doesn't work that way. So if they left completely and didn't even have an org and went elsewhere, they should still be included in the tournament with no org. Doesn't work that way. It's not the sort of tournament it ever was from day one, and all the orgs going in knew this, and it's up to the org to communicate that to the players, not E-League, by the way. That's the org's responsibility to do so. Then he says they have no control for who they played before July, and no control after July. Well, guess what? It's your job. Ignorance. If you ever go to court and say, I didn't know, Your Honour, they'll say ignorance is not an excuse. It's up to them to know what the circumstances are behind, oh, well, if we leave Luminosity, then we can't play in E-League anymore. You have to know that, and that has to be something that's a scenario. Luminosity themselves are the ones ultimately who are responsible if they want to use you to have you contracted through to the end of E-League. Likewise, SK know that if you join them, you can't play in E-League. Therefore, they're gambling that they don't care that happens because they get to have you as a team. Now, the idea that, their job is only to play CS and focus exclusively on CS, then why are you fucking commenting on this stuff as though you're experts like these players have? Talking shit when Tempo Storm doesn't get included. What is this personal? They should be included. Why are you talking? Why are you an expert? I thought you only played CS. That's your only job. Exactly. You get to have it both ways with fans. That's the worst thing about these people. Now, this is where I made the comment that if the Fallen clip on Cobble, where he has the scout clip, is just a bug, then someone should recreate it and show us that it's just a bug. Pretty reasonable request. This guy, 29 points, says, I mean, shouldn't the people saying this isn't just a bug go looking for more proof of it not being a bug? I mean, they are the ones accusing Fallen in the first place. Wrong. You have completely mischaracterized it, and you have failed to understand the onus for burden of proof. Burden of proof comes where we say, this is a suspicious clip. I don't know what causes it, and I'm suspicious as a result. Then when someone steps forward and says, it's just a bug, that is when they have to prove their claim. The onus is on them. The burden of proof is on them to prove the claim with videos, with other examples, recreating it, not just explaining words, showing us how it works. That is the onus of proof. If I then say, well, I don't know if it is just a bug, I don't then have to go and prove that it isn't a bug. That's not the same way it is. First of all, you can't prove something that isn't the case. And secondly, how would I prove that? What, by proving he's hacking? You don't understand the basic concepts, yet you're the one talking as though you were an authority. And even worse, people upvoted you to 29 points, mate, when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about here. Also, as a final point, this is irrelevant to the onus of proof. The onus is on you to provide burden of proof, or to provide proof because you have the burden of proof on you. One final point. If I don't know that it's a bug, and I don't know how it would be a bug and can't recreate it, how am I supposed to go and find the proof for it? You're the one who says you do know it's a bug, therefore how about you do us all a favour and fucking recreate it so we can see it, because you apparently say, I know how this all works and how to recreate it. Go ahead then, please. What a ridiculous scenario this is. It just shows how people circle jerk whatever way they like. It's ridiculous. Now this is where there's a comment about what a joke it is that we use a randomizer to pick the third map for majors. So this guy, 49 points, says, having ban, pick, ban, favours the better team tremendously and allows teams to limit themselves to a shallower map pool. In that scenario, you can practice 4 maps consistently and win series against teams more often than you should. Some maps will also never be played, which is ultimately bad for the game. If you have 1 ban and 1 pick, you have to be reliably good on 5 to 6 maps to win series consistently. What he says is actually just provably inaccurate. Like when he says that having a ban section first, then a pick section, then more bans, he says favours the better team tremendously. Well, yeah, it does. That's because they play more maps. Do you understand that that's why? It's not because they're just the better team. It's because they actually have the deeper map pool. By not having the second ban phase, you're punishing the teams that play more maps. And yet you later in the comments say you want teams to have to be reliably good on more maps. Now, in terms of the part where he says that if you have the second ban phase, you can only practice 4 maps consistently. How can you? Logically, you ban your first map, right? There's 7 maps. You ban your first map. What if the opponent then bans one of your best maps? There's now 5 maps remaining. You only practice 4, remember? You only play 3 of those 5 remaining maps. They can now pick one of your maps you don't play. You can now ban another map in that scenario. Then, let's think. So there's now 2 more maps taken off that. There's 3 maps left. Think about it logically. It doesn't make any sense what he's saying here. Since you can only ban 1 map, aside from the 1 map that you ban, they can pick anything they want. And likewise, in the second ban rotation, they can then ban out another of your 4 maps that you say you practice. They've now got 2 of your maps you practice out. There's 2 left. Randomizer doesn't actually help you at all in this scenario. I don't understand what he's saying. It helps in as much as the randomizer. No, if it was a randomizer rather, the randomizer helps you because now, even if you only play 1 of the 3 remaining maps, you could get that as a fluke. With the ban phase, they will just ban that as the last map, and now you've got no maps left, right? Easy. It's done. You're done, mate. In this scenario, 3 maps, 3 of your best are out of the equation, right? So that doesn't even make sense. And he says it's ultimately bad. Some maps will also never be played, which is ultimately bad for the game. Well, that doesn't make sense. If they're never played, they probably were maps that no one likes to play. No one even likes it as their second best map. That's why it's getting removed. And no one's good enough on it to make people ban it out. If people ban out in that scenario, no one wanted to play it, mate. Otherwise, you could always have that in as the third map, right? Or the second map. Doesn't make any sense what he's saying here. So this is from the thread where I said that Nico was the best player in the world. Let me think. Was this the one where I said that he would be the best? Let's have a look. It's where I said, like I said, Mouse Nico is the best player in the world. I think it's when he did the Deagle Ace. So there's a comment here with 9 points that says, I agree with what you said about not using like I said, lol. I'm a fan of Thorin. I know, so they're always a fan when they talk mad shit about you afterwards. I'm a fan, but when he says that it makes me roll my eyes. Well, goody. Do you not have any point to make? Same thing with his tweet about SK repeating as major champions. He goes, like I said, even though at the Columbus Major, he said that SK, LG back then, had peaked and wouldn't get any better than that. Pretty safe to say they proved him wrong. They did prove me wrong that they were able to get higher than that. First of all, that's not some huge sin. I don't, for the rest of my life, have to walk around in sackcloth, gnashing and wailing in my teeth. I was wrong. Kick me, spit in my face, Lord, that I said it. You're allowed to be wrong, change your mind, and improve with new information. I know idiots like you think you have to stick with all the wrong opinions forever. No, you're allowed to actually move with the times and continue on. Secondly, what does me saying that they wouldn't win in Columbus have to do with me saying they will win at Cologne? Two totally separate predictions, totally irrelevant. And as a result, doesn't make sense. One does not follow the other. You haven't even made a point here. And you're like, let me explain why he is wrong, as he then proceeds to incorrectly explain. Great, brilliant. I'm rolling my eyes at you, you fuck. Now get up my sight. Now, this was a thread about Roker on CLG's changes. 13 points. And then someone was linking to like a comment I'd said or something. It said, and they were talking about when I do like the beak face, like the semicolon and the greater than sign. Or colon, rather. It's just Thorin's way of talking shit, but with the beak face, people will just think it's banter and that it's just a prank, bro. Little inside. Come here, son, come here. Banter is talking shit, you fucking moron. Now, next thread. God B was right. So this had 300 points. It says Nico is one of the sickest players on the planet right now. And Mouse Sports is starting to look a lot like Titan when they had Kenny S and Apex. But here's an unpopular opinion. Nico is the reason Mouse Sports hasn't been doing that great. Remember when Mouse Sports first upset the international scene back in May to August when they had a steady run of solid upsets and top 4 finishes? This ended in Cologne 2015 when they bowed out of the group stages and removed Spiddy for Nico. And since then, nothing has gotten better. In fact, I would argue that their previous results with Gob are more impressive than current ones and more consistent. Gob used Spiddy, Dennis and Chris J better, and we can clearly see that. Just head over to their stats page and view the difference from 3 months to 2015. Even in an I'll skip all that part. Right, first of all, let's just go through this. First of all, it doesn't make sense. They didn't play against the exact same competition. They played against teams further on in history. They played against a much better SK/Luminosity team, much better, a more skilled Fnatic team, therefore more able to counteract Nico's skill. They played against a Na'Vi that got better at the end of the year. Let me think, who else is there? At this point in time, it had pushed teams like TSM, question mark Astralis down to a lower level, so they're going to beat you earlier on in tournaments in theory. Let me see, who else did we have? We had the rise of Tempo Storm / Immortals. We have Envious was still pretty decent towards the end of the year with a brand new lineup compared to what the guys from Mouse have been competing against before Cologne. Let me see, what else do we have? Only at Gamescom did they compete against the Kenny S Apex lineup. What else do we have? We had, who else? NIP improved. We had Tai Lu come along. I mean, just basically across the board. God set up here. Across the board, we got an increase in number of good teams and level of some of the better teams. That means you're not even competing against the same opponents there. I mean, these guys used to compete against the old NIP, who used to be finishing top 4 in finals still. That's how old it was at the time when Gob was in the team. Secondly, the implication that it's like Nico's fault doesn't make sense. Gobby's team himself dropped off while he was still there as in-game leader. What if he's such a great leader, he can get the most out of Spiddy? How come he can't get the most out of Nico to make him a star player that'll win games? Never addresses that, of course. Finally, as I've already alluded to myself, I heard it said by multiple sources within the German scene, Gobby was kicked from being a player and only allowed the option to be a coach precisely because he stopped playing and was not dedicated to the game anymore and was just dicking around himself. He wasn't this dedicated super in-game leader that you all think he was, who was unfairly kicked from the team. That's not the case, and that's why when they had bad results and he wasn't being dedicated, they were like, we can't have this guy being the leader in the team anymore. It's not working anymore. And Nex fell off like a motherfucker even while Gobby was in the team. Go and look it up yourself and go and watch those games. It happened. Now, in terms of the part where he says that they're starting to look like Titan with Kenny S and Apex, first of all, Kenny S was like a Nico level player. They have no player in Mouse, the last nine months of Mouse, that is comparable to what Apex was in Titan, where he just took over games himself and would just drop 30, 40 kills, take over a game, win the game single-handedly against the world's best teams. They have no player who does that. They have Chris J, and Nex never shows up for the big 250k tournaments. So totally irrelevant. Classic example of where people use like weird circumstantial evidence to prove something's right or wrong. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, let me see. Here's a comment from the Thing about Solo, the 1.6 legend coming back to CSGO, 18 points. There's a lot of players that couldn't transition for X, Y, Z reasons. But Neo's reason is easy. His playstyle at 1.6 was abusing the movement, and you can't play like that in CSGO, so it took him a long time to become above average. First of all, don't think he is above average. I think if you actually look overall, past month or so he's been above average, but for the whole year, I think in terms of top pros, looking at the top 10 teams, he's been very average or below average for a top 10 level team player. If you look overall at how his stats are and how the actual games are with the eye test. Secondly, the idea that it was just his movement made him super sick is absolutely ridiculous. His skills, they weren't super refined and super neat like a Forrest or someone like that, or Real or whatever, but he had this brutal ability to just output mad damage, win super amount of clutch rounds, dominate the game, had really sick rifle skills, and he was just way better than he is now in CSGO, and none of that's changed in that sense. Oh, there's different mechanisms, etc. But put it this way, it doesn't make sense that Forrest can be a star player, because Forrest also relied heavily on incredible movement. He had the smoothest crouch hopping, duck jumping, of Russian style walking of any player in CS 1.6. He was the perfect player at that, and then he used technique bursting. These things don't exist to the same degree in CSGO as they did in 1.6, but he made the transition. So it doesn't work as like a very simple answer there. But at least I understand that you're pointing out that he had excellent movement, Neo did, which he did, but that wasn't his primary quality that made him the best, in my opinion. Okay, this is one where, let's see, here's a good one. So this is where Richard Lewis did an AMA for, I think, while he was on the desk host for Turner. 14 points. Are you ever going to say what happened with Schneider? You've hinted at it in videos before with Thorin. Surely, as an ex-journalist, if you know something, you should report it. No, why is he obligated to report something? Because he knows it. Sometimes I know things, but that would be incredibly damaging, wouldn't do any good to report, and actually I don't think like these people should be punished, shamed, outed, all the rest of it, and so I don't tell people it. Especially if it's not my place to, especially if it's something very personal or private that has nothing to do with their career at all. Don't out these things in that scenario, and no, I'm not obligated to. I'm not a public servant, you know. It's not an elected position journalist. We're not obligated to do what you want, to tell you what you want, to do the stories you want. We do the stories we're interested in, and if we do it for integrity and truth and all the rest of it, that's great. That doesn't apply to this particular situation though. So let me see. Okay, I'll do this as like a last comment here. Let me see. Oh no, I'll do two more comments. So this is from where I did my story about Shox' peaks. And this guy, 17 points. I agree, but let's not take anything away from... This is when Shox should have won the MVP for ESL Pro League Season 3, but instead they gave it to Scream, and it should have been Shox or Cold Zero. Probably Shox if you look at the whole tournament. And this guy puts, I agree, but let's not take anything away from Scream. He had a fucking amazing performance too, and maps where he hard carried them. So when you say, let's not take anything away from Scream... Well, no, actually, that's the whole point. What we're saying is let's literally take the MVP away from him. He didn't deserve the MVP, even if he had some maps and a really amazing performance at the LAN or for the big final. Over the tournament, Shox was better. Therefore, we should actually take something away from Scream, the MVP award, and give it to Shox. Do you understand the point of this? Now, this is going to be the final one I'll do. It's where Oscar said something about... Let me see. It's something about NA teams. Let me check what the title was. Oscar said, I don't get the best NA discussion. All NA teams, including... Oscar meaning Mixwell. I don't get the best NA team discussion. All NA teams, including us, are far from winning majors. Who cares about online matches? Which I agree with. This guy, 132 points, says, you could tell he's a really mature player by deciding, paraphrasing, I don't want to carry the game and have all that pressure on me. Let me play around you guys and we'll improve together. It's pretty much the opposite of Simple, who always wanted to the AWP. This guy gets that even if he carries with the AWP, and it's not enough to win as a team. So he'd rather put his teammates in a position to win and get an AWP when it makes sense. Pulling this from a recent DAPS interview. Can't remember where I saw it though. Except, first of all, Mixwell is the hard carry of that team, does get the AWP anytime he wants it, does hard carry, definitely doesn't do the shit this guy's outlining. I'll just make you guys all stars and make it all great, and I'll only get an AWP when it really suits me. Definitely doesn't do that if you watch the way he plays. No matter what he says or whatever DAPS is sending him, you just watch the fucking games. He is the hard carry of that team, and it's built around giving him a chance to hard carry. But I love this fantasy world where he's just paraphrased, as in just make shit up, you mean, and then just read this guy's mind as to what he thinks. And it's like listening to a little 13-year-old girl talk about her favourite boy band. And then, Billy's so kind. He even said that actually Jamie is the best looking one in the band and that he thinks Nick actually has the best singing voice. And he just said that even though obviously it's both him for those factors, but he's just such a nice guy. And I can tell actually that really he'd be like the best husband ever. And we'd probably go to trips to the Hamptons. And then he'd even say to my mom, like, oh, you is this your older sister? And she'd go, Jamie, oh, you're so funny. Like, get the fuck up my face, mate. Like, stop the fantasy world and actually just stick to talking about the game. Also, the AWP should be used as a carry weapon. The way you're describing an AWP being used is a terrible way to use it. Economically will destroy your team. Don't use the AWP on a player that's just using it every now and then and just using it for like, I'll just set you guys up, then I'll get the AWP. The AWP is a carry weapon. You give it to people to carry the game and to lock down positions. And you know what? I realise this is months before the fact for ESL 1 Cologne, but how do you like it? How it turned out with Simple at the Major A? Get dicked on. So we'll just leave it there for now. There hopefully will be more regular episodes.